Hello everyone, I'm Nicole from Neon Shed and today I'm chatting with AJ from UQ Power. Thanks for your time today, AJ.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Hello, everyone.
So we've known each other for over a decade. I worked for you back in the old WorkCover days, and there were times that I remember the culture being a bit heavy. And one of the things I remember you implementing, it's one of the things that stands out quite big for me, is in a difficult period, you developed the warm and fuzzies. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I think it's sweet that you do as well.
Do you want to explain what you did there?
Yeah, I remember I came up with the idea and I actually worked with Kelly, who was my executive
Yeah.
assistant at the time. And I said to her, people are just a bit down and I think they need a pick me up. And I didn't want it to be really serious and heavy like the culture was, as you were saying. And I wanted something just a bit light and fun. And I also wanted it to be a little bit viral where people could get on board and feel empowered to play their part in it, and that it wasn't like a top-down thing. And so we developed these little warm, fuzzy creatures that we would distribute at night, and then get people to go and give warm fuzzies to other people. So if someone did something good for you or gave you some good service or were just nice to you in the coffee room, you leave a little warm fuzzy for them on their desk. So they were kind of like little critters with eyes and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about spreading positivity, right? Like it really did. And I loved it because we were kind of in this, well, even me just individually, I was in a whole get the work done and work and focus. And you were always very, let's take a breath, let's focus on the good things. And I really learnt from that. And I started implementing that in a number of different ways in workplaces after that. So yeah, I'm really grateful. And it was, it was such a great thing to do.
I'm glad that warm fuzzies had a ripple effect. And I remember even originally we just started it out in kind of our department.
Yeah.
And then it spread. And I remember the CEO even had a couple of them lined up on their desk. And I was like, oh my God, it's gone viral now.
Yeah. And it's just something so different and fun. And for the CEO to have something like that, like it's a bit different to than just the awards or the plaques or yeah. I mean, I remember
and all of that. Yeah.
I remember sitting in with you and gluing little eyes on the little fuzz balls.
Yeah, we'd have sheltered workshops to create the warm fuzzies so they could be spread. But it is that whole idea of spreading joy and positivity. And also what it made was it gave people a lens with which to look for catching other people doing good.
Yes.
And so instead of finding fault, which the kind of culture that we worked in were people who were used to finding fault, you know, as a regulator, their whole job is to find people doing the wrong thing and to stop them doing bad things. And so to shift that lens into, can you catch people doing the right thing or a good thing?
Yeah.
Really just gave a real different lens of the way we went about our work. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really did lift the culture. I do remember that. So thank you. So you are, yeah, you are my friend and also my mentor, and you have helped me through your Leading Ladies program create my own personal brand and share my value with the world. So I thank you for that as well. And as you know, October is Mental Health Month. And as we both know through our history, mental health is just as important as physical health. And I know you've got some really interesting stats on those. Did you want to share the statistics?
Yeah, so I guess not so much specific statistics, but just to share the trends and what's happening. And this is happening globally. I guess my experience has been in Australia, but it certainly happens in most of the Western world and most of the developing world. And that is that, you know, years ago when we looked at workplace safety statistics, they were all around people injuring themselves through slips, trips and falls. So they were very much manual handling things because a lot of our work back then was much more manual. So it was more farmers having a tractor rollover. It was an electrician, you know, getting electrocuted, unfortunately. You know, it was people hurting their back or injuring their back, doing manual lifting and those sorts of things. And then as our work for a lot of people has progressed more and more to be desk-based, And particularly as we've been through COVID and everyone's working from home and all of those kinds of things, it started to be that this trend shifted to people cohabitating, working together in open plan offices and all those sorts of things, different expectations, not so much physical labor. And what we started to see was psychosocial issues. So we started to see bullying and harassment and depression and anxiety, and all of those kind of more psychological issues is what started going up in the workplace injury statistics. So whilst we can put PPE on, we can wear protective glasses, we can put a hard hat on, we can wear a brace, we can use a ladder, for all of those kind of manual things. And I guess workplaces have got much better at that. What we aren't able to do is, you know, put a hard hat over our brain and take care of our mental health so much. And so that's where we've started to really see a rise. And I think the heavy reliance on computers and, you know, being on screen time and sedentary and all those sorts of things has also contributed to that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I want to focus our chat a little bit more on not reducing stress and anxiety, but increasing confidence and positivity, because that is you all over. And again, another thing that you've introduced me to is the Amy Cuddy Power Pose. I think you've introduced that to thousands of people actually, but that's a great way to increase confidence and also to help reduce anxiety. Can you explain what the Power Pose is and what happens when we use it?
Yeah, so for those who haven't seen it, because I know Amy Cuddy's TED Talk is one of the most popular ones in the world, and lots of people would be familiar with the Power Pose, but basically she did a series of some research and studies, and I believe it was Columbia and Harvard universities combined did the research. And what they looked at was, how is the brain affected by the way we hold our body and by the way our physiology is? And so she had people do a series of tests and things, whether that might be maths and problem solving, physical tests, you know, brain game things. And she had them do these series of tests. And for half of the group, so the control group, she had them do low poses. So poses that were restrictive and that I guess were more in the fetal position, where shoulders down, head down, you know, all my energy forward, or as I would say, shining your light on the toes, you know, kind of all of that down. And so those people, and so then the other control group, sorry, she had doing what they call a power pose, which is essentially, you know, if you think of your hands on your hips, well, really it's taking up as much space as you can and lengthening this part of your neck. So looking up, you know, eyes wide open, you know, arms on hips or arms out wide. And so really taking up space and allowing your light to shine, you know, and to shine up. And what she found through her research and all of these series of tests was the people who held the power pose, the pose that was up and uplifting, for just 2 minutes, as opposed to the people who did the contractive poses for 2 minutes, performed better in every test. And they weren't necessarily brighter or smarter, and they mixed those groups up, but every single time, people who held that power pose performed better. And it all came about through the change in chemistry in their brain that told them, I can do this, I'm okay, I'm a winner, you know, I can achieve this, I can solve the problem. Whereas the people who are in contractive, and you think of a child when they're upset and sad and suck their thumb, you know, they go straight to that fetal position. When we're sad and depressed, we go straight into that dark room, want to lay on my bed, you know, all of that contractive. And that's the brain's way of coping, right? And so that's shutting down all of the amygdala in the brain and trying to soothe ourselves. But it means that we don't shine, we don't have confidence, and we don't perform to the best of our ability. So you literally can shift your brain, if you're feeling down, into a better position just by smiling. You know, so even faking a smile activates muscles, which activates your neurology. You can, if you're not sure and you don't know how to fake it, you can do this. With a COVID-approved your own pen, of course.
Your own pen, yes.
Putting a pen between your teeth actually artificially creates that smile line stuff, you know, and I've got no problem with my big shiny cheeks at smiling. But what it does is chemically, you know, activates good mood, you know, cortisol and chemicals in the brain that tell you, I'm great, I feel good. And so you can literally trick yourself into performing better. And I'm not saying it's going to be the difference between a pass or fail in a test, you know, it's not that foolproof, but it is going to make you enter something with more confidence and more spark. You're going to feel more capable and more able to tackle whatever it is in front of you. So there's a lot to be said about, you know, the old deportment schools of, you know, shoulders back, you know, head up, all of those kind of things actually do really have some scientific basis now behind them.
Yeah, and so valuable and important to help improve mental health as well. Like just those simple little tricks, the science behind it, it's amazing. So,
And, you know, I do run relationships and healthy mindset workshops for schools, for a lot of schools, so teenagers. And one of the challenges is, if we think about what we all tend to be carrying around all the time is one of these guys, is a mobile phone. And so what they're finding with teenagers is a lot of mood disorders, a lot of anxiety and depression, and a lot of mental health issues. And most of the time they're on their phone, which of course makes us do this. So they're actually moving themselves into that downward feeling all the time by looking at their phones and having their hands and their head down all the time. And so no wonder we're experiencing so much youth, you know, issues when it comes to anxiety, depression, mental health. Yeah.
And then put 2020 on top of that. It's, yeah.
Right?
But
it's a storm.
Yeah, it is. But you've also created the 10-degree shift model, which you say is the secret to doing less and achieving more. And I've been on multiple webinars and training where you've spoken about it, and it really is the trick. Can you give us an overview of that 10-degree shift model?
Sure. So maybe I won't go through all 10 because it is quite a lot, but I know you can probably post a link and share it with people. It's on my website as well, alexandriajoy.com.au. Yep. But really the 10-degree shift model is useful for you as an individual, but it's also great for teams, cultures, communities, you know, so whole organizations can use it as well, or a family. And what it does is it works at an individual level, at a team or group level, and then at a company and community level. And what it really does is help us just make tiny little incremental shifts to improve our well-being all around. And so often people think I've got to make these radical changes. You know, if my culture's not great, I've got to turn everything around and, you know, change everything. Or, you know, I want to lose weight. I want to feel more healthy, whatever that might be. People go into these radical things that then don't have stickability. And so the whole idea of 10-degree shift model is for sustainable change. And that is, we just make these tiny 10-degree shifts. So what's one thing you could do to move more? What's one little thing you could do to stress less? What's something you could do to introduce more plants into your diet and into your environment? How can you have more of a growth mindset? So what's something different I could try every day to just challenge my brain a little bit? Do I have clarity of purpose? And some of the 10-degree shift model is based on the work by the Blue Zones. And that's a whole heap of research that looked into which of the cultures in the world and the communities or towns where people live to be the oldest, I guess. So these are communities that have disproportionately the most centenarians, and not just people that live to be over 100, but people who live really well. So healthy people over 100. And what they found was they all have clarity of purpose. They know what they're doing in life, whether that's just taking care of their family or they volunteer for something in the community. They have this tribe vibe. So one of the towns that is a Blue Zone is a place in Japan called Okinawa. And they actually have it where every time a child is born, they're automatically given 5 other friends that are born in the same month, in the same town as them, or around the same year. And so they're put into these little friendship groups, and those groups then meet every week, or some of them every day, for their entire life. And that sounds amazing and overwhelming, but a lot of these it's a rurally kind of area. And so this becomes their tribe. And so when they have a divorce or a breakup or their pet dies or whatever it might be, they've got this circle of friends that has been kind of created and curated for them. But most of them that you saw that were centenarians and over 100 were still having cups of tea every day with their little tribe. And just knowing that I've got someone here who knows me, who loves me, who has my back is a huge part of mental health. The problem with so many people in our society is isolation, and that I don't feel like anyone cares. No one would even know if I was sad today. Whereas this group, if you're sad, you've got these other 4 or 5 people that are going to pick you up straight away. So that's really important. And then just things like, how do you give back to the community? You know, that's part of it. In what ways do you give back? Because part of having good mental health and well-being is also that I do things and I care about things that are beyond just myself. Because usually when we get too focused on just ourselves, that's when we start to have problems, because we start to go, oh, I don't like this about myself, or I'm not happy with these results I'm getting, or I keep having the same thought every day. And so as soon as we have a lens that's outward focused and we start going, you know, who could I help and support? Who needs my care in the community? How can I be more engaged in what's going on in the world around me? Then people start to actually have better mental health. So there's loads in the 10-degree shift model.
There is,
and we probably won't go into all of it, but yeah, it's really about how can I just make small tweaks and changes.
Yeah. Yeah, it is wonderful, and I definitely recommend anyone watching this to take a look at the 10-degree shift model, and I will definitely attach a link there as well. I think you covered off a little bit of these, but October, as we know, is Mental Health Month, and the theme this year is to tune in and be more present. What do you do personally to tune in?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I do. I guess you can encapsulate it in one thing, and that is that I practice slow mornings. So, and I've done this for about 5 or 6 years, whereby I discovered I move through the day much better. I perform much better. I'm a nicer person to be around when I've taken the time to ease myself into the day. And I don't mean that I'm not a morning person. I actually love the mornings. You know, it's not like I'm grumpy until midday. You know, I bounce out of bed, but I know that I'm better if I'm not touching social media and listening to news and conversing too much or even talking too much. And I talk a lot for a living, but I don't talk really before 9 a.m. in the morning, sometimes 10. And so I still get up early. I'm usually awake by 4:30, up at 5-ish. And I will do things like I'll meditate, and that's one of the best ways to tune in, tap in, turn on. And I know for me, I've been meditating for a number of years, and when I meditate, that's where I get my answers. You know, if I've got stuff going on and I've got questions, this morning I was asking about my own brand and some of the things I was doing, and I got a really strong message around a kookaburra and the color of feathers on a kookaburra. So, you know, you don't know where that stuff comes from, but it comes when you're in that deep communion with yourself and with the earth and, you know, source. And so I then will go for a walk or a run, and it's usually in the bush or at the beach. It's somewhere where I can commune with nature. So either I can be with trees, or I can hear the ocean, or put my feet in the sand, or whatever that might be. And so for me, that communion with the greater, you know, the planet around us, and that sense of nature and peace and calm and not having stimulation from the external world. So I'm not listening to what's happening with the American election. I'm not listening to what's happening with COVID. And if you ask me, I really don't have much of an idea at all. I think one of the best ways is to eliminate as much of that as we can, because, you know, TV, for example, is at a frequency that really does brainwash us and can really make people feel down. So I haven't had a TV for over 20 years now, and I know some people go, what? But I choose what comes into my environment. My ears and my eyes are part of that. So for me, I would say my biggest thing to tune in has been through, you know, my meditation, and then my exercise, which is more a communion with nature every day. Yeah.
And I remember you sharing your slow mornings, and it's actually something I took up probably 3 or 4 years ago now too, and it really did change everything, because I was one of those people who just wanted to get as much sleep as possible. Sleep was very restless, so I would put the alarm on as soon as I needed to kind of get out the door, so I'd have everything ready to go, my clothes, my breakfast, and just be able to get up, put my clothes on, put my makeup on, pick up my breakfast and eat it on the train on the way. And it just wasn't serving me. And when you started explaining what you were doing and why you were doing it and how you were doing it, I went, oh, I want that. That sounds much better than what I'm doing. Yeah.
And
so
you know, I have people who are parents say to me, I couldn't possibly, because I've got kids, you know, find your own pocket or window. But you'd be amazed how healthy it is for kids to get out and go for a walk in the morning as well. And I know people say, oh God, the school run's abominable. But you'd be amazed how much smoother things go. I've had clients that have actually introduced a bit of slow mornings, or done afternoon walks with their kids in the park and those sorts of things, where we have no devices, we go and we just distill, and how much that affects the mood of the children. And how much more they're able to cope and not get so overwhelmed, I guess, because the world is a really hugely stimulating place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always on, right? Like, it's always something on. Yeah. Well, you have provided so much value, and I'm sure many people will want to get in touch with you after this. What is the best way that people can get in touch with you?
I would say LinkedIn is probably best. So I'm AJ Alexandria Joy on LinkedIn. So look me up there, connect with me, and don't just connect and not send a message. Send me a message. Tell me you saw me here on Neon Shed with Nick. And I'd love to connect with you and chat more.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for your time. I'll pop a link to everything that we've spoken about here so everyone can connect and, yeah, tune in. Thanks, AJ.
Thank you.